Right, back live with you tonight on In Focus. Thanks for staying on. The Special Investigating Unit probing funds of students who received the NSFAS funding who were undeserving, and now they have told institutions of higher learning owing the NSFAS fund scheme to immediately pay back that money. We're speaking now to Kaizer Kganyago on the work that they've been doing. Good to have you, sir, and thank you very much for your time. You did, of course, indicate to Parliament that this is close to 5 billion rands that went to undeserving students that you are currently investigating. But we believe that some universities have begun to do the process of paying back what is called allocated funds for the period between 2016 and 2021. How does that come about?
Thank you very much, Thabo, and thank you to your viewers. These are two separate matters. The one matter is the issue of when we were doing the investigation, we found that there were more than 40,000 students who applied for NSFAS, but they did not meet the criteria. And in that regard, we are dealing with that in relation to having to go to each and every one of the more than 40,000 students to understand the circumstances and where we need to recover. We will do so when that time comes. This one is the difference with this one is the universities when every year NSFAS had this policy or process where they will fund students in a specific university. Let's say there are 100 of them that are funded in that year. And then you find that 20 of them or so do not register at the university, or they were deregistered and moved to another university or so on. But they kept that money in their coffers for years and years and not sent it back to the NSFAS. And then when we started asking questions, therefore we got some college in Western Cape, two colleges in Western Cape, one in Mpumalanga, and now the University of Johannesburg has given back 311 million rand that they had kept between 2016 to 2021. Therefore, that is the difference. Therefore, that is why we are now calling for all the other institutions, because this process, we have found out that it has been happening in all the institutions. They kept the money instead of giving it back at the end of the financial year.
So the two processes are separate. You're saying the 5 billion has already been given to the students. So those who are undeserving students, they've received that money, is with them, and you're currently in the process of finding out what happened and if you are able to recoup that. But this is a separate matter altogether. So this is monies that how did you find out? Are they reflecting in the books of the universities?
Yes, because at the end of each year, NSFAS was supposed to do a reconciliation and say, we have given you so many millions for so many students. Let us see how many of them have registered. Therefore, we subtract the amount of those that have registered and they are studying. And then what is remaining is so much. Then you bring it back to us so that we can fund the next group in the following year. But NSFAS wasn't doing that. Therefore, we then suggested to them that how do they know how much money was spent? They have now agreed with us, and they have appointed a company that is going to help them to reconcile in all the universities and in all the colleges. From now going forward, that will not be a problem. But for now, we are saying to the universities, the money that you are keeping that was never used for any student, it is not belonging to that university. It belongs to NSFAS. It must be taken back to NSFAS, and that is the process that we are engaged in at the moment.
So we can't just assume that the University of Johannesburg just developed a conscience out of nowhere, and they've decided, all right, we've been keeping this money in 2016 and 2021. Let's take it back. Were laws broken here? Is there some illegality that has happened here?
Yeah, I don't know about the conscience. Obviously, it is because we started investigating, because we started the investigation in September 2022. Therefore, when we started asking questions, they realized, not only them, but many others, and we know sitting here that there are many other universities that needs to bring back that money. But there is one of the things that we do, Thabo, is we investigate maladministration. And this to us is part of maladministration. You might not have done something illegal, in terms of the criminal side. But maladministration is equally a problem, and therefore we are looking at maladministration on both sides, both at the NSFAS and at the institutions themselves. And once we get to the maladministration, we are going to ask the questions: who did what, who did not do what, and then what are the consequences that comes after.
Yeah. I would presume that this is something that you would probably need to also forward, maybe if not to police, but certainly to the Auditor General to have a look at.
Obviously, but at the moment, this is a very easy thing to reconcile. Like I say, you can easily see. If you've got a list of 200 students and you can easily see 100 or 150 or 120 of them have gone through the studies in that particular year, it means the other 80 or whatever did not come to the institution, therefore that money was not used. And obviously we'll have to go back to the institutions and say, where did you put this money? Where is the interest that you generated out of it?
Yes. That's where I was coming. I was coming to the 311 that was quickly paid back. Does that include interest?
And not at the moment, but this is something that we are dealing with. This is the money that was paid to them. But now we want to know the interest that you have gotten in the 5 years, for example, might be a lot of money that we might need to also go and get and take it back to NSFAS.
Yeah, and when you look at this, I mean, 311 just from one institution, what is the sum how much would it come up to if you were to include all the other universities that could also possibly be implicated here?
We don't know. At the moment, we are looking at with only about about 5 universities and colleges that we are looking at. I'm not going to name names. We might be talking with only 5 or 6 of them over R1 billion.
Over R1 billion that could possibly be recovered just from this process alone. And what
only 5
just from 5 of them alone. Wow. Yes. That's a sum certainly for NSFAS, especially for the students that could possibly be funded here. And so would that mean then you would also undergo a process like you have done in other instances where you say what is the benefit that you derived, be it an oversight on the part of NSFAS not doing what they were supposed to have done, and therefore collate that and get a sum that needs to be paid back?
Yes, we will look at it, but like I say, in this particular instance, it might not be the issue of criminality. Obviously, the maladministration will be dealt with in another way, in the form of disciplinaries and other ways. But for us, what is important is to recover the money and then take it back to the NSFAS so that it can be used for what it was intended for, instead of sitting in a bank somewhere and not being utilized. Therefore, recovery is the biggest thing for us, and we want to recover it so that people can benefit. But also, those that have done criminality, like in the previous one where students were not deserving, if we find that there's criminality, that will take its own course through the National Prosecuting Authority.
So let's come back to that a little bit, and maybe you could tell us, as far as the work that you're doing in getting those students back. I believe the cost is estimated at 70 million rands. Do you have that money?
Yes, we are able to sustain ourselves now, but you must know that when we do this work, we charge the institution that we are investigating for fees. Therefore, what we were doing in Parliament, we were showing them what this investigation, at the end of the investigation, the cost would be. We were dividing it in accordance with the resources that we're putting in and so on. But we also said that this is the projected figure, but we might be, at the end when we reconcile, usually it comes up to less than that 70 million that we're talking about. But this is the projected figure that we are going to be charging NSFAS for doing this investigation for them.
How complex is that process going to be? Because if NSFAS itself could not trace these students, for example, check their employment status, serve them with letters to say, hey, you've benefited from this, time to pay back. How complex a process is that going to be for the SIU?
It is going to be complex, but obviously we know now who are these people, in which institutions. We have categorized it clearly by now. We know how many students per institution, who are they. Therefore, the matter is that we're dealing with is we want to avoid a situation where we brush them with the same brush and say they are all have done something wrong. Because in some of the instances, the circumstances around us, Thabo, are problematic. For an example, you'll find that here is a child who has got the parents, Thabo and the wife. But Thabo and the wife, when they got married, they left the child with the grandmother, and they never went back. And the child used the grandmother's pay slip from SASSA to get this whatever. Therefore, their circumstances might be different from one person to the other. Therefore, that's why we've got to go talk to each one of them and understand the circumstances, look at the paperwork, and then that is going to consume a lot of time for us to do, but we'll have to do it.
How accurate is this information, and what's the real threat of losses of relevant documents, and therefore you could be looking at a situation where somebody is under the radar and you cannot be able to get a hold of them?
This one was a simple matter to say, here is the criteria, here is the application, there's a discrepancy, you do not fit in the criteria, therefore it means you are not supposed to get. You must understand that NSFAS is not for all students. It is meant to give to the needy. Therefore, the first thing that we look at is the family that you come from must not be any less than 300, must be any less than 350,000 rand a year combined. Therefore, anybody who earns above that, it means you don't qualify. That's a simple principle. And therefore, that's why I'm saying that was an easy thing to look at, but the circumstances are a difficult part that we've got to go through. Therefore, we will have to look at each and every separate situation to understand what really happened, because there are instances where deserving students don't get because it was given to those that do not deserve, where the parents were able to afford to pay for the schooling of their children.
Fantastic. Well, now that I got you here, because I know you've got all the files just at the tip of your hands, quickly tell us what's happening with the KwaZulu-Natal feeding scheme investigation.
Yeah, we have not started investigation there, Thabo. What has happened here is when these matters were coming through in the public space, what we then did was we wrote to the Department of Education in KwaZulu-Natal to say, give us the information, because now we need to verify all the things that we are hearing from whistleblowers, from the media and everywhere else. And we are still waiting for some of the documents from them. But also, we've gotten information from other areas in KwaZulu-Natal, people who have volunteered documentation. We are now in the process where we are assessing the documentation, and once we are done with the assessment of the documentation, we will then determine whether we have got enough information and there is prima facie evidence to the fact that we can ask for a proclamation, because we cannot investigate without a proclamation.
Right.
And that we will do, ask for that proclamation, and then the other option that we have, which we will give to the Premier of KwaZulu-Natal, is to say they can request for a secondment, where we can second some of our officials there to start the investigation while we are waiting for the proclamation.
Yeah. So as at this particular moment, the intervention by National Department of Education, the Provincial Department of Education, and I saw even the Premier herself going on her own fact-finding mission, those do not affect the work that you've already started?
No, it doesn't, because we will be looking at the beginning of the tender, what happened, whether it was done in a proper manner. If it was not done in a proper manner, we'll have to take it to the tribunal to be set aside. If there's money that needs to be recovered, we'll recover them, regardless of whether the contract has been cancelled or not.
I appreciate your time. Thank you very much for coming on tonight. That's the spokesperson of the SIU there, Kaizer Kganyago, bringing us up to speed with the latest developments.